Okay, welcome to another stream this week. I wasn't planning on doing one tonight, but I wanted to talk about the drummer track a little bit because we're getting a new drummer on Monday in Logic 11, and yet this is the closest tool that we currently have. And so we can look at some of the clues we have and talk about the drummer and look at this, because I do think that there's some interesting things that I was thinking about with it. And I'm not positive, but I remember watching a lot of that iPad announcement earlier this week, and they referred to the drummer track as it currently was as, a version of AI, and that they were going to be expanding. However, I don't believe that the current drummer track that we have in Logic 10 is actually any form of AI. It makes sense, I think, once you understand some of the context around it, but I want to look at it a little bit tonight, and we'll go back and forth between that and the announcement page on the Apple website, because I do think it's worth understanding what this really is. This week, there's been a lot of talk about AI, and people are like, ooh, I don't want AI. AI is going to do all of this stuff that we don't want. It's ruining music. And in fact, the way that I think that these tools are going to be approached is not like AI. And it's actually, I think, in most cases, not even going to resemble artificial intelligence as we might have thought about it previously. I was actually having a really good conversation with ChatGPT today, which is AI, a language model, right? Generative AI, which means it takes a bunch of stuff, you input data, it comes up with something completely new and can do a lot of stuff with that. Now, we're not comparing apples and apples here because they're not the same thing. However, I asked, based on what it knew about the drummer track in Logic, and it knows Logic quite well. I've done videos about ChatGPT and Logic in the past, and I put the manual into it and asked it questions about the manual, and it flat out says the current version wouldn't qualify as AI. And so maybe we need to look at what's going to be added into the next version that may actually push it over the edge. But what it was saying is, here's what it said. Drum Machine Designer, or the drummer track, allows users to manipulate and create drum sounds and patterns, but it operates based on user input and pre-programmed algorithms without the capacity to learn from user interaction or improve its performance over time. And so that's actually really true in many ways. So I'm going to go over to Logic for a second. When we're looking at the drummer track here and the functionality we have with the drummer regions, we can choose some of the beat presets. We have the matrix here with simple and complex being left and right and soft and loud up and down. If we reprogram this 10 times and put all of the parameters in the exact same place, we're going to end up with the exact same results. That means that there's not, in this version at least, any sort of AI component. Not really. The one exception, and this is the exception that I could think of when I was going through prep for this video, is the follow button, which if you use the follow button, and let me just grab some stupid bass part, and by stupid I mean just something super simple, and we're just going to use an Apple loop. I guess that makes sense. Dear goodness, I love Apple loops. Okay, bread and butter bass. Something so simple, and we'll just loop it. right? Super simple. Now, when we're in here, we say follow the bass. And we can actually zoom in a little bit. You won't be able to see the exact changes because it uses this approximate version of MIDI, but it's not exactly. So I'm going to turn off the follow, and you'll see there are changes being made. So it's the follow algorithm. That is the one area that I can think of where this could potentially qualify as an AI type system, because it's looking at new data that's coming in and making changes that we're not fully controlling based on what that data is. Okay, so that means if you're using the drummer right now, and the drummer has a lot of depth to its controls. I think that's one of the things that some people really like about it, is that sure, it has a real surface level playability, meaning you can just dump a bunch of drummer regions onto a project, and the drums will get played, and it has all the right parts. It's like really superficially easy to use. But then you can come through and do a lot of this additional advanced programming with it. So we can change the loud, soft, simple, complex. We can't automate that over time. We can cut the region into additional slices. And when we do that, then we can actually program it differently. So say we cut it right here, all of a sudden, this second part of it, we can increase the complexity a little bit. Let's see how much it has to go. But if I take it back, it's like I'm just looking at it with my eyeballs. That looks like it was a second ago. I move it an inch over to the right. We've added some complexity. It's very predictable with that, but we can actually customize the pattern by doing it. So if I wanted to add a different fill or a different length of fill, I can cut the end bar into half and turn up the fill amount. Awesome. The new one, by the way, is going to bring us more of that, but also similar in some way. So you can see we have fill amount and fill complexity. So they've given us additional features to use with that. Okay, so repeatable, definitely repeatable. If I move all of these parameters to the same place, it's going to be the same until we use the follow button, and then it's going to interact with the other parts. And so perhaps by adding the keys, the studio keys, session keys, and the bass, which are going to have the similar follow functionality, they'll be tied together. Perhaps that's where this turns into more of an AI scheme. But I can't imagine that it's not going to still rely on this database of patterns and harmonic structures that have been pre-programmed, and we're just going to get control over how those will be altered and manipulated. In the same way that perhaps you could download chord packs or pattern packs. It's not like it's a different way of packaging and using it, but it's not going to be like spontaneously combusted based on an analysis of every song ever made, like ChatGPT would be. So it's not a true AI. There will be some AI components. The current version of Drummer, the Drummer track, is pretty far away from AI. It is incapable of original thought past its own programming. And, ChatGPT, is it really capable of original thought? Well, it's capable of putting words together in ways that maybe no one has done before based on all the knowledge. But we can't even do that in here. And so if you're expecting these tools to be able to create a bunch of new music, I think that's where we're actually going to be mistaken. It brings me back to a few years ago. I was sitting in a small local movie theater in Los Alamos, New Mexico. They have a couple screen theater there. And they had like this obviously local company had put together a bunch of advertising for local companies, for other local companies. And so it was like really, cheesy, low quality, not great, not very professional spots. And you could tell that they were using GarageBand with Apple loops, or even Logic with Apple loops, I guess, for all the soundtracks, because I could hear these, the orchestral ones that we have inside of Logic, and they're still here. I mean, that's the thing. This is the whole thing about it. Let me pull open the strings for a second. Maybe it was Academy. It's like one of these ones that I've heard over the years because they've been incorporated for so long. They're royalty free. And that means I could be sitting in Los Alamos or Denver or Europe or China, and somebody could be using that, and it's the exact same file that all of us have access to. So part of this with the drummer and these other instruments, unless they've given it enough depth of programming, the thing that's going to happen is you're going to be able to hear when people are using these tools. It's going to be hard to imagine that they've programmed it in such great detail. Now, that's the challenge. When we actually see the release on Monday, we're going to know pretty quickly, within a day or two, how much these are capable of doing. And so all of a sudden, are we going to start hearing, some people thinking that this is all really original and it's great? Or is it going to be able to blend in with what people want enough that it'll be usable and not distinguishable from actual player that you might have hired to bring in the studio? That's the question. In its current form, drummer, at least with drums, and I think this is probably why they started with drums. You could listen to 15 different songs that use acoustic drums, and there are going to be times in each of those songs when the patterns are exactly the same, right? I mean, you hit the snare, the kick, the hi-hat in really predictable ways. And so I think that was an easier task in many ways to make it the first kind of auto instrument that Logic did. And GarageBand for iOS, and for iPad OS, they have other instruments that do things. They have patterns and strumming things for guitars and for strings. They've had those for a long time, but they only are capable of like 6 different things. You know what I mean? It's not really a lot of depth to those instruments. And so if you use them, you're guaranteed to sound like them. And not like musical ideas. You're guaranteed to sound like GarageBand. And so that's the hurdle. It's possible. It's possible to go through with these new instruments. And I mean, bass is maybe another one of those instruments that only has a limited need for, it doesn't need endless variety. A bass is a bass. You get certain styles, great. And then maybe that could work. It could work. Jazz, I don't imagine Logic is going to the world of jazz, because then there's a level of sophistication which may be above the pay grade of what these tools are going to do. We'll see. Keyboard, this is the one that I'm worried about, because, they spend a lot of time that we know about making sure we could add pedal noise and key noise and release samples and sympathetic resonance. All of those things are great. We could actually end up walking away with 3 of the best pianos ever recorded. And I've heard some people conjecture that maybe these are the same instruments we already have. They're just repackaging them. And I don't think so. One of the reasons I don't think so is because we have the sympathetic resonance, which we don't have on any other logic instruments with pianos. And we have the mono mic and the 2 stereo miking options, which we also don't have with any of the other instruments. That means to me they either bought somebody's piano, hopefully they didn't go cheap, or they paid somebody to record a new one, and we just don't know yet. Some of that stuff ends up leaking out. Before we had studio strings in Logic, we had a lot of different default string sounds. And we found out at some point that they had just bought the Vienna library's old instruments because they had upgraded and made new ones, and they've made new ones even since then, and new ones since then. And Logic has like the original OG ones that, Vienna was just trying to offload for an extra buck. And so we have all the old Vienna things in Logic, and they're not great, as you can imagine. Studio Strings was an update. I don't know if I ever heard where those ones came from. I have a feeling that they had a team create those ones specifically for this based on some cool ideas. Because I don't remember anyone saying that those have been purchased from somebody else. Anyway, I'm hoping, if nothing else, say the keyboard player plugin is not terrific, then I'm hoping at least the pianos are terrific and we can use them and play them like we would with any instrument. Maybe they're even, MIDI 2.0 compatible with all kinds of velocity and realism and all that good stuff, right? So back to the drummer for a second, though. The other clue that I was seeing on this, there's a couple of clues. One of them is right here where it says the chords. That's a new thing where it says chords. And perhaps that is referencing the chord track. Even though the drums wouldn't be using a chord track, it may be referencing that so that you can maybe have it take a break, right? So instead of cutting it up and leaving it empty, you could say, you know what, get to this chord. I want you to lay back and do like an alternate groove, maybe something that's super simple, and then do a fill back into the next section. Hopefully something like that. But the other thing was this preset that says AM Gold. And so I'm thinking, along with everything else happening here, that the AI part may be more of like a central brain for these 3 instruments. And instead of the drummer itself being AI, it's like just something that has all of the parts and the samples and the patterns, right? And the bass is attached to an instrument, and it has different performance elements and whatnot here. So you can see, we have the playing style, some other instrument type things, and we have rhythm, solo, bass, treble. Well, the bass treble, not as surprising with that, but the rhythm versus solo, we'll see exactly what that does. But the brain that controls these and has them play together would be the area that's most AI-like, AI-esque. Just like in the current version of Logic, we have the follow button, and that tells it to interact with the other instruments. That becomes the part that is a little bit more human-like and unpredictable. We can't, it's going to be different every time depending on what the input is from that sidechain part. And so that'll be the part that I think is the most interesting. I don't think anybody needs to look at this and say, ooh, AI is ruining musical ability and Logic. I don't think that this is going to do that in any way, shape, or form. Because I think, for the most part, what's going to come out is very predictable, like an arpeggiator. It's like we don't talk about an arpeggiator ruining things because it plays notes that maybe our fingers can't play as well. We set up some rules. We say what pattern for the arpeggiator to do, what range to do, what speed to do, what gate to do, and then it does those things. And so it's not, I don't think this whole system is going to be capable of actually creating new music. It's going to be very rule-based and very guided-based, and you're going to have to tell it pretty much everything what to do. And that's still going to take input from somebody who understands musical part of all of this. Let's look at the comments for a second. We're got a few people watching. How's everybody doing? Tranquility Base agrees. Drummer is still not a true AI. Plastodon, who's been on all of my streams this week, holla. If they added a grid where you can adjust the notes to taste after the auto-generated part could be usable. And I mean, I'm assuming that's going to be the case, just like it is the case right now with the current drummer track. Because once you have something you like, there's two ways to do it. I'm just going to drag it onto a MIDI track for some, well, actually, I forgot that's not, they changed that one of the other versions. We'll convert it to MIDI region. And so you can always take anything that's created by that and put it into MIDI and then alter that MIDI however you want. And so I'm assuming that we can always or should always be able to take what it creates and convert it into MIDI, which is at the heart of all of these instruments anyway. They're not creating a new language of performance. Logic uses MIDI for everything, automation. I mean, it's just like, it's some version of that was the source of all of it. Whether they've expanded it or not is different case by case. Vinash PS says these are algorithms and not an AI. It takes parameters and generates results. Exactly. And so I think people need to be less worried about AI taking over logic and more interested in exactly what the actual algorithms and tools, what the input is needed and what the output is expected. So that way you can and see if it's going to actually help in any given situation. Real Epic says copy drummer track and paste it into the MIDI track is how they do it. Yeah. It used to be you could just drag it down, but I think now with one of the later versions, they made it so these regions can live in other places. And partially that's because, for instance, you could load up any drummer you wanted, not just the drums from Logic, but these can control other drums as well. And so I don't know if I have any other drums easily accessible right this moment, because I just offloaded a number of things. Oh, yeah, I don't think I have anything right this second handy. But we could certainly, well, here's a TR-808. I don't know if I have that license right this second. I do. Or I don't, but I can do it real quick. So, if I remember my password, authorized. Okay, cool. So, what we have with this 808, right? TR-808. I can just load the drummer track down onto this. Right, so my drummer track region is controlling a plugin not even from Logic. That's been possible for a long time now in different formats. And if you don't like the output of what's happening there, then you can just use the scripter and we can load up, let me see, which one would we use for this? Drum Kit Designer Remapper. And so then we can choose the kick signal, where we want that to go, the snare edge. These are all of the different options for the drum kit designer. And so we can program those to meet the Roland 808 on any of those. So we have full capabilities of using these regions with third-party drummers as it is. If you don't like how the drummers sound, but you like the drum programming capabilities, then you're free to use it however you want. I'm hoping that'll be the case with the keys and the bass, because sometimes I want to use a synth bass and sometimes I want to use a synthesizer with the key part. And I don't want to be limited to whatever instruments they give us. So that's part of all of this. None of this is AI based. I mean, it's just not. Now, because there's 3 instruments that are going to be working together, and I'm guessing with other things. So when we do the follow on the current drummer track, I can do that with any instrument. I can do that with the voice track. I can do that with keys, whatever. You can, any track that's available, you can do it there. So I'm guessing those 3, the keys, the bass, and the drums, could be tied into a performance that has to do with like the voice or a guitar part. And so in order to do all of that simultaneously, this is the part I'm guessing is what they're going to be considering at AI. It's that brain that's controlling all of them. So it has to analyze what's happening with the other tracks. The other clue to this came in the form of this section of the page where they're saying they have the stem splitter. Okay, that makes sense as AI in some ways. They're using the neural nodal network engine to analyze, extract, recreate, and split everything. That's actually a fairly intense programming accomplishment. That's no small feat. And we're hoping that it'll be better than everybody else's. If they've waited this long, hopefully it's not worse. If it's the same or worse than others that are currently out there, my guess is that they're going to be tracking what's happening with it and they'll improve it. As the people use it and we get feedback, they're going to make it better and better and better. Chroma Glow, who knows? We'll talk about that one next week. Pitch correction, we already know, uses the neural pitch detection, which looks for patterns and does an awesome job. Mastering Assistant, I'm only partially sure about this, but the character part of this is really the part that is AI driven. And we know that because one of the models was available for everybody, and like the other 3 were only available on the M chips, the silicon. And that means that they're doing something different. And I believe that what's happening with the character part of this is what is going into Chroma Glow. And so they've got this great idea with the Mastering Assistant to change the character of the whole mix. And that's going in, looking at what's there and building character off of the existing harmonic content by recognizing the patterns of the music that's there and then enhancing it in a more direct way. That's exactly what Chroma Glow is promising to do. And that one is going to be interesting to test out. So the rest of that is like match EQ and a compressor and some metering and a stereo width. I mean, none of the rest of that is super innovative. We've had all the other tools, but it's the character part that I feel like was more AI than the rest. And then they talk about smart tempo. And none of us really thought about smart tempo being like on this list of these AI tools. And yet this, I believe, is going to be what ties in all of the new session musician tools that we have. Because it has like gotten better and better and better at recognizing the feel and the beats and where everything falls. When they first released some of these tools, it was pretty sketchy, but it's really improved. It's gotten tons better. And so this then feeds into what we're doing with the other instruments and ties those together with whatever other things we're looking at. And so in order for us to play like a guitar, have the tempo be mapped, and then add in the bass and the keys and the drums, and have them all be like a cohesive unit that makes musical sense but also ties to the audio recording we've made. That like little bit of that connection is the part that I'm most excited to explore with all of these, because I can play my own bass parts, I can play my own key parts, I can program drums one note at a time if I needed to. But I need to see how good they've gotten with this, because this part, the rhythmic part of tying multiple things together, is like a quantizer, groove quantize on steroids. And if it works, then we're going to be able to apply these things in so many other ways that maybe people aren't thinking about yet. Some of them being, for instance, freeform recording, where you record without a click track and it does all the analysis, and then you're going to do some quantizing. The flex time and flex pitch have gotten good enough to quantize audio recordings and have less artifacts every iteration that they've released. And then, we can record the other things that we want. We don't have to use the auto bass player, which on some level is going to be right for people, and for other levels, it'll be ridiculous for them to use. But maybe the bass sounds that they've made and the new pianos they've recorded. The one thing that we don't know yet that we're all hoping, that I'm hoping for, I can't speak for everybody. I learned that this week that I speak for nobody except for myself. Because everybody has different opinions on all of this. And it's really cool to see such a diverse group of people getting super passionate about their tools. What we don't know is if they've added new drums, new drum types, and styles of playing. I mean, if they're going to go this far and add all these new instruments without giving us some new drums. And I'm talking like, great, we have this enhanced drummer track, right? Let's do like a Neil Peart kit, you know what I mean? And have cymbals all around and toms and, 3 kick drums and 2 snares and 4 hi-hats. Okay, I'm just seeing if you're listening by talking about hi-hats. We don't need more than 1. But let's do some advanced actual kits. I mean, I've never worked in the studio. I've never, ever worked in the recording studio on a drum session and had this kit exactly like that. And yet all of the kits in Logic Drummer Track are this. We can change out the toms, we can change out the snare, we can change out the kick, we can change out the cymbal pack and the hi-hat. But they're all like this one configuration. And that to me is the biggest break from what we envision an AI tool to be able to do. So the AI part becomes the rhythmic, the connection of all the instruments, and not the actual like drummer itself, right? It's like I can tell ChatGPT, I said, let's start speaking Czech or French or Spanish, and it like changes languages right on the fly and can say things in other languages that it wasn't expecting to say. We can't even say throw on an extra kick drum or pull off the head, or there's so many limitations to this because we're living in the rules of the code, and there's no actual intelligence with that at all. Whoa, I'm ranting. I don't know if you can tell. Michael, for reals, what if I use AI and what comes out is what someone claims an existing copyrighted song? That's a great question. That's something we face all the time right now with media online, because there's so much of it that an algorithm scanner, digital rights management tool is scanning to see if you're using copyrighted stuff, right? And yes, I've had a few times early on when I was working on YouTube, and it's like I couldn't use the professional projects I was working on my video tutorials. That's usually a no-no when it's somebody else's music and they end up, publishing it, and then they get all the money from the videos too. Great. So I was using some really basic stuff, and it would still get flagged sometime because somebody else had released a song with one of the, like an Apple loop or something, and it would trigger that, and then you'd have to do you'd have to refute the claim and go through a process. It's a pain in the butt. So far, you can't. Oh, this is where it gets tricky because of late, it used to be the melody and the words, right? You couldn't copyright drum pattern or a bass line. But now we've seen in the courts that aesthetics of song and what a song sounds like overall can be brought into, a contest, or it can be contested. And so that is going to be interesting to see how this all plays out with people who use these tools and then release songs with them. If the drummer and the bass player and the keys are all doing the same thing with the same groove coming from these tools, that's going to be a mess. Simple answer is when you're creating and want to release it and monetize it, make sure it doesn't sound like anybody else. It's not always possible, but it's preventable to a certain degree. So that is going to rely on each of us making music that doesn't sound like other people. Plastodon says, I've requested for years, now more realistic metal drums, 4 toms, more cymbals, double basses, etc. Yeah. It's like, why? Why? If they skip that with this update, I'm going to have my mind blown. That they would give us more of exactly the same. It would boggle my mind. Now, I'm not expecting them to do that. I'm hoping, without knowing, because even if I did know, we couldn't talk about it. But I don't know. Let's see what they release with this. If it's the same, if the drum designer is limited to the same drum kit, they've really missed something with this. And they don't understand the people using these tools outside of their target audience, which would not be most of us. I mean, simply, it wouldn't be us if they just keep it with that same basic kit. Jeez. Michael says, I did a version of John Barleycorn on YouTube, which is a public domain folk song, and got a notice from the publisher company of Steve Winwood. Oh, yeah. Love that. I mean, seriously, sometimes I do a lot of original music on my channel. And I love my own stuff. I like it. I like doing what I do. It's not overly complex. It scratches an itch, but really, I love Logic and talking about Logic. And so my own songs have been a vehicle. But I make sure that I'm not using any songs that resemble other people's whenever I can help it. Every once in a while, one triggers something, but I've gotten a good sense for how that works, and I typically am able to avoid it with some of the checks and balances that YouTube has put in place. It's not straightforward, never has been, and there are some bigger issues, I think. Because there's just so much content. The YouTube they really sold us short. They sold video creators short too with some of the deals they made for the audio. They were one of the few, though, that has gotten deals for audio across the board, meaning I do this international study abroad every summer with students. I do a wrap-up video. And YouTube is one of the places where I can do a promo video and use top 40 hit. I don't care. I'm not making money off those videos. They're promotional. And so I don't care if they, claim the copyright and give money to the main artist. I'm only going to have 1,000 views or less. But they have a system like that. So I could spend, for a 4 or 5 minute video, I could spend all of this hundreds of hours filming it, editing it, and getting it to look just right. And then I put one song on there from an artist and they get all the money. It doesn't matter how much time I spent on the video portion. I could have spent $1 million on the video portion and the artist would still get all the money. They're not splitting it with the visual side of it. Unless you're like one of their, protected artists or high profile people, maybe it's different. But in exchange for using a track, you give up all of the revenue to the track and to YouTube. So it's really messed up in some ways because it should be split with those who made the visuals as well. But the same thing, you couldn't put it up on Facebook or any other place. They would just be automatically blocked because not every platform has gotten the deals that YouTube has gotten. So YouTube has actually made inroads, and now it just needs to be refined. But I don't know if anyone's interested in refining it. There's not enough money in it. It's a precarious place. Again, ranting. So it's unlikely that any of this is going to feel like true AI come Monday. It's just not. It's not going to feel like there's 3 people inside your computer playing. We're going to have a lot of tweaking to do, chords to be laying out, styles to be picking, all of this crafting that's going to actually take artistic decision making that we don't have any other way. It's not going to make a lot of the hard choices for us, I don't believe. And that's based off of what we've gotten with the drummer track. There's one layer, superficial layer, where you can just lay in the drums and it'll be fine, right? But if you really use the drummer track right and customize everything, then it's going to produce something, but it takes skill and musical experience to get there. And there are, Plastidon was saying, I see now in the bass that there is a grid to adjust notes. Yeah, we don't know exactly, that may be showing us what it's doing. Here's the question I have about that, right? So, and they're not showing us this exactly, I don't think. Let me see. Studio bass. Here's the bass player. So the studio bass, this is the instrument. And then the bass player is the drummer track version. And there's the piano one. And I wonder where it says chords. This is the drop-down menu. So I'm wondering if there's other things we can trigger it off of as well. Or if there's alternate chord tracks. There's a lot that I have questions about with that. And then the preset looks like it applies to the bass. And then we have all these lines right here. This is not exactly like the drummer track, although it's going to be similar. And then down below, we have the complexity, intensity knobs, the melody, some notes, the octaves, some, phrasing, long. So we're going to be able to control it with some amount. There's a fill option as well. We can set a lowest note. I want to see what's on the details page and the manual option. Oof. There's a lot that we're going to unpack on Monday. I think we're all going to be, I think most people are going to be excited and not turned off by this because it'll be fun to experiment with and see what it can do. Right there it says follow the drums and it has some sort of pattern that it's going to be doing. Oof. That's going to be cool. I still don't think it's going to be AI. Not truly. I think there's just a bunch of rules and pre-existing patterns, and we're going to be setting up those guidelines and letting it exist. But I don't think anything's going to come out of that we're not telling it to do. Plastidon's asking what time we're going to stream on Monday, and the truth is, we don't know exactly when the thing is going to drop. Usually it's 10 to 1 anytime in my time zone, which is like 12 hours earlier than it is right this second. But I'm just going to start some point in the mid-morning, and we'll get all pumped up about it, and we'll start streaming, and then I'm going to download it while I'm streaming and do the full install on the stream and open it for the first time on the stream. What we want to do is there's going to be a lot of other videos out there. There are some of the YouTubers who are in the betas, for instance, who have been really quiet this week. We know because they're probably not allowed to talk about it quite yet. Yay for those of us not on the beta. And they're going to drop probably some videos, a number of them on Monday. So there'll be a good mixture of someone going through and actually like breaking down the features. But those will all be like stagnant videos where you can watch it at any point. They're going to be pre-made. And what I'm interested in is coming in and filling the need of the live stream where you can see, and as I install it and open up something, you can actually say, hey, go back to that for a second. What is that? And we can actually talk about it and look at it and have more of a conversation about it. And so I think that that's one of the strengths of what I do on the channel as opposed to what others do. And then later in the day, I'll come back on and we'll do another stream later in the afternoon where we actually go through all of the release notes for the Mac version. And then we'll do all of the release notes for the iPad version. And then we'll also see if the remote, the Logic remote will have to be updated too because there's new things here. And so we're hoping that will have some updates. And then we'll see if MainStage has done anything differently. It's been really quiet about MainStage. And so we'll see if any of these instruments come to that venue as well. So we'll figure it out. There's some other comments here. Let's see. Okay, so Plastodon's installing on Monday too. I don't recommend everybody install it. There's a lot of people who should and can. But if you're in the middle of a project or have third-party plugins you can't live without, then you should wait. And then Dr. Voodoo says, I saw on Reddit, someone found that there's new buttons for the library and inspector. Let's see if I can see any of that stuff here. I don't think. What are those? I haven't even looked that close. Yeah, so there are new buttons there. Right up there in the top corner. My guess, honestly, and this is what I've been thinking about in terms of those, is that we have the new browser that's in the iPad version. I'm guessing that they're going to port that over to this version as well. So we'll see. Yeah, exactly. Dr. Voodoo says the buttons look different and match the buttons on the Logic for iPad. I'm getting to your comments in order. And that browser is significantly better than what we have in the actual Mac version. It's not perfect, but it's significantly better. And so we're hoping that that's the case. Let me see. My phone just buzzed at me a second ago. Let me just respond. This is a live stream, so you're getting everything unfiltered. That's my favorite way. Let's see. Just gotta say hi. Okay, cool. Okay, so Monday. What day is today? Thursday in here. Some of you, it's already Friday, I'm assuming. I swear I'm not going to make any more streams until Monday after this one, because Monday I really want to do a longer one and have as many people on there asking questions and sorting through some of it, but all real time and unfiltered, because I think that there's some stuff to really, it's like we're going to all have to kind of sort out what's there and what isn't. I'm just now looking at all the buttons. I mean, everything else looks very similar. So, what is that button right there? Let's see. What is? Yeah, that's the same one. It's just a little fuzzy. Everything else very similar. The chord track, I'm surprised at how. I mean, maybe that's all we need, right? I guess we don't need other things. If I was designing this chord track, one thing that I would do is add like a circle of fifths option where you can get to a lot of, it's like doing a graphic version. They love to like pretend like Logic looks cool. But there are so many ways you could actually do some of these things visually that would be way more interesting. If they did a chord track that was, instead of all of these like little boxes with words that just look like Logic, somebody who designed something at Logic built it, and they actually took like a week and built a cool interface that had like colors and so much more than this. They could have put that on the front page and said, look, we have this amazing new chord track that can do anything you ever need with your chords. It's like the Swiss Army knife of chord tracks. I mean, people would have been like, holy crap, I'm buying a new Silicon Mac tomorrow to have it ready for next week. This chord track leaves me kind of feeling like, man, that's like music theory from college. And not everybody took music theory in college, but this is like music theory from college. It's like, yeah, Mage, Min, Sus2, Sus4. Again, they're just catering to like a certain group of people who understand what all the hell that means. And they're not actually catering to people who are learning this. They could have turned this into a tool that was both learning and elegant and fun, and they just screwed it up. Thank you, Apple, for making the most boring chord track ever known to humankind. I do wonder what the preview thing is. Also, if you look over here at the chord header, I hope that's a plus key or something where you can add multiples or change it out. It's like, let's make this so we can actually try out different chords. I know they're probably thinking, well, you're going to play audio stuff. But if I'm doing all MIDI composition and I want to change out my chords and experiment with chords, I'm hoping that we have the ability to try out alternate versions. But so far, what we can see from this, I'm guessing maybe not. Weird. It's like, ugh. I hate this iterative development. They're like, oh, you know what, everyone, just get this out. We have a deadline. Make it as good as you can. I know you haven't fixed all the bugs. There's still probably a list of like 250 bugs with the new things, but it's coming out on the 13th of May. So, have it ready to that point. We'll start fixing the new bugs after that. Let's get some feedback from users. If there's any major things, we can fix them, within the first 2 months. Oh my gosh. It's been more than 5 months since the last any update from them. And they introduced some fairly big stuff in that last one. And they just said, you know what? Let's not do any small updates whatsoever. It's too much of a bother. So, let's hope there aren't any massive ones. They will fix any ones that are debilitating to the software or that update any hardware manufacturers, as they've done sometimes in the past. But we're just going to probably be stuck with what we got for a little while. Hopefully this time. I know when 10 came out for the very first time, they were doing updates all of the time. Like every month sometimes, and just fixing stuff because it was all new. Let's hope they do that. But I'm tired of the small updates and then they add stuff. It's like, why can't we just, you know what? Tell us what you're going to add. Take 2 more months and actually make sure it's all working and fixed, and then we can use it. I mean, that's what Ableton has been doing. They usually tell us more in advance and get people pumped. Other software does similar things where they make an announcement. They don't just release it the day after. Who knows? And then Abiyama is hoping they add a reggae drummer. Heck yeah. I mean, that's like a legit, still active, exciting, vibrant musical genre. And instead they're giving us, let's go through these for a second, just because we have time for a minute. Let's see, drummer track. We currently have, in the rock category, pop rock with Kyle. Kyle's great. I love that this was a joke that we made when they first released, but they gave them all names, the drummers and their character backstories. We have retro rock, hard rock, punk rock, funk rock, Brit pop. And even, that's like the punk rock one. If I recorded a punk, like a group that came in and did a punk tune in the studio, it's never going to sound like the kit that they attached to this, which is like clean and crispy and not very punk rock at all. It's like you got to like really lo-fi some of this stuff or change how they've done it. Alternative, indie pop, indie disco, indie rock, garage rock, modern 80s, and synth pop. Okay. That's quite the collection. Songwriter. And I actually love the songwriter ones. I use them for the styles that I do a lot of stuff in, but the funky songwriter, the pop songwriter, the experimental songwriter, the root songwriter, the 60s songwriter, the roots brush, and pop brush. R&B, modern, neo, and modern Motown. Electronic, we have big room EDM, tech house, dubstep, electro, trap, modern house. I know you could all read these on your own, but trap in the hip hop, trap, modern hip hop, and boom bap. And then percussion, we have Latin, pop percussion, and songwriter percussion. Wow, there's a lot of styles not in there, right? Everybody in the chat, put your top requested style that wasn't listed in those. I want to see. It's like I'm not doing a ton of metal in here, and I know a lot of musicians who play metal would probably scoff at using an auto drummer, but I know people who use some of the other auto drummers that are not Logic's, and they swear by some of those metal kits. I have done some like orchestral things, which I wish I had like a real metal style kit. Reggae was just brought up. Jazz. I mean, come on. Progressive drummer, Dr. Voodoo requests. I don't think any of those would be too hard to do. You can mimic some of them in some ways, but I wish instead of all of the kits sounding kind of similar, that they would have really gone authentic on the recording techniques as well. Anyway. Okay, I think this is a good place. We're about to hit an hour. Oof, this is a smaller stream, which is kind of nice. Thanks for those of you who are here talking bad boys asking for better hi-hat patterns. And I agree. The patterns are all limited. So we're looking at, with this kit, 1, 2, 3, 4 hi-hat patterns. And then if we go back to the non-follow, it's like we have 6 standard kick and snare, 1 half time, 1 double time. I mean, come on. That is so limiting in some ways. Anyway, let's pull the plug, Nice to see you all. And Dr. Voodoo actually said something I was thinking but hadn't said, which is maybe one of the benefits to them moving away from the square matrix into sliders for complexity and intensity is that they could be automatable. Somehow I doubt it. The AI. You need to buy the M5 chip in order to automate the complexity of your drummer. Or the M6 in 2026. That's when we're going to get automation on the drummer complexity. That's my smart ass prediction. Okay, see you all later. Bye.